Does it say cool? What's up, everybody? My name is Marpeza. I am the co-founder of Mahogany Circle. And this is our group, Mahogany Mothers Circle. So we're really excited to be back on the Zoom space. We have a very special guest. Her name is Liz Walker, and she'll be talking to us about just fertility and abundance after 35. I'm also a mother of four, a doula, and a community advocate. So I love to just hold space and have these conversations. If you do or you don't have any children, we just want to be here so that we can be a beacon for all things Black motherhood, all things Black womanhood. So, Mahogany Mothers Circle has been around for 2 years, August of 2022. And we've done virtual, we've done brunches, and then we've also done some co-partnering with other organizations, including Sacred Seeds Birth Worker Collective, which I am the village coordinator. So it works really well to just create those resources and be a cross-community collaborator, which is why we have Liz here. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I did want to share with you our charter. So, you know, about what we as a collective back in 2020, we decided that we wanted to have a statement of who we are and what we're about. So I'm going to go ahead and read it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pass it on to you, Liz. How does that sound? Awesome. So Mahogany Mother Circle is a safe space. It's a place where we share our feelings and help one another. It's a place where we have real conversations, a place where we respect and honor one another. It's a place where we maintain confidentiality as much as we can because we're on Zoom, but just using that information, I would say, since we're on Zoom, but using that information to be productive and distribute it in a way that is honoring our community. Let's say that. But it's also a place where we are empowered by each other's journey, a place where we ground ourselves in love, a place for Black mothers and their seeds, a place for genuine, authentic sisterhood. We are a community of confidence, realness, and dignity, strong enough to stop time. And we're a place where we are intentionally present. We are learning to develop examples and live our womanhood. We value that we have the capacity to bring forth life and maintain life, each other in womanhood. Honor our proper image, and that is who we are. So welcome to Mahogany Mothers Circle, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce to you Liz Walker.
I'm snapping it up for you, Mahogany Mothers, Justina on the call, anybody who is coming in. I'm gonna say, like I said, we started with some really heavy, well, the world is heavy. So we're starting with a heavy world, but we're gonna just take a real deep breath and with the intention of making ourselves lighter. And we're gonna take this deep breath and give thanks. Whatever the name of the creator is that's spoken in your heart and in your mind and your soul, let's give thanks to that being. We're going to give thanks to the ancestors. Name them right now in your mind and spirit, those who are protecting you. We're giving thanks to the ancestors that we don't know by name, but that are here constantly with us and protecting us. And may all the collective wisdom that we're bringing into this space just generate a greater frequency of health and wellness for our mothers over certain ages, but all of our mothers really, so that we're able to usher in babies and healthy babies into refreshing new untraumatized spaces. So we're just giving thanks right now and taking a moment of silence, taking a deep breath. Ashe. So thank you. I just wanted to bring that in. I can jump in starting to share my screen. Hold on. I think you got to make me the host so that I can share the screen here. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. My name is Liz. I'm actually in Philadelphia right now, born and raised in New York. I've been a doula for the last 15 years or so. I'm also an educator. That's really like my primary career at this point. Source of income is working with high school students and helping them on pathways to college, really on pathways to their education. So let me say that, and debt-free pathways towards their education. So really taking a look at what life after post-secondary looks like. Yeah, we can, that's a whole other thing. Listen, it's all about setting them up. You can go on to all the avenues of your education, your training, and not have to pay a dime. And I'm really excited to say that our young people left and right are getting in full ride spaces. Like they're just getting the monies they need. And it's phenomenal. So I'm really here to just like talk about also in the last 2 years, I've become a mother. I'm a home birth mother. And so I'm really here to kind of bring that story into this discussion of what fertility looks like. And so I came up with this concept of FertileAF because I'm 44 years old. So I was 42 when I became pregnant. And I'm grateful because I knew immediately from that point which midwife I was going to work with and how I wanted this to go. But what I found is my pathway was so unique because a lot of our mothers don't have, they haven't been in the birth community for the last however many years, you know what I mean? So they don't have a midwife who they know and trust. And, that being said, I really going back into my doula work since I've been a home birth mother and I had this experience, it's really shifted my trajectory to the point where I have a hard time participating in births that are in birth centers or hospitals, just because their protocols are so rigid and so bound, particularly for women of color and women of color over a certain age. And so, one of the things that I really want to like talk about is this idea of advanced maternal health. And so what does that look like? And so what I'd like to do is just open up the discussion and keep opening it up so we can all do this, but deconstructing what the denominator is. The denominator for a lot of us, it looks like it's just like, oh, you're at risk just because you're a certain age, or this idea that come a certain point in your life for you to even consider childbearing is an at-risk concept. So I want us to reframe some of the statistics we hear, teach our mommies how to reframe those statistics, and then seek new pathways and explore different ways that we can support fertile AF mamas. That's what I'm calling advanced maternal age mamas, fertile AF. You just fertile AF. And then we're going to end with some avenues towards relaxation and rest, which I happened to become pregnant at the onset of the pandemic. And I really, really, really believe it was the fact that I just stopped going to work physically. I had more time. I was sitting at the river. I was resting. I was really in a yin space. And what I had found from that space is that somehow from the period of 30 on, I had accumulated so much stress around pregnancy that I felt like it wasn't even for me. Like there was this just stress and fear that kind of rose up. And so once I just slowed down and I sat at the rivers a lot, a lot of that shifted. So I want us to even take some time today, depending on where we are, just to get a little bit of yin yoga going, a little bit of restorative yoga going. And so really right now 40 plus mamas are on the rise. Having a baby quote unquote later in life is more common than it ever was. But if we all look at it, we all know women who are like at a certain age haven't been, like there's always been that, one or two. Now it's even more. I mean, the truth is now we have more women over 30, 34, even plus 40 that's going up in having age, while women who are 25 to 29 are going down in the age of having children, or the percentages are going down. So there is this switch, yet although there's this switch going on, the protocols continue to remain the same. And so this is really important, because the trend of women who are older having more women who are older having babies is not just focused on the US, it's global. Globally, this is happening. And so even with that kind of shift going on, we don't necessarily see see a shift in the care of these women. They're still treated at risk. And so I wanted everybody to kind of take a moment and just Google some of the terms around this. So if you Google advanced maternal age, or having a baby over 40, pregnancy in older women, Google something and tell me what pops up for you, because I think that this is a really interesting kind of point of reference. And so I don't know if anyone wants to kind of jump in. You can just unmute yourself and just say what you see. It's a little hard, maybe if we're on the phone, or if you're.
No, I did because I never heard the term actually, but advanced maternal age, and according to the Cleveland Clinic, advanced maternal age is a medical term to describe people who are over age 35 during pregnancy. Pregnancies have an increased risk for certain complications when the birth parent is 35 or older. And that's like legit the only 2 sentences before you can click on the article.
Yeah. So as I was preparing for the slideshow, this is the 30-second dive. I spent 30 minutes to an hour diving just to find statistics, and everything was focused on the risks related to having babies over the age of 35. And so when you really think about that as the denominator, and these denominators are based on very rigid protocols for women, and that puts them, whether they could be in complete optimum physical health, there could be no prior existing condition that pins them at risk, but simply because in the algorithm their age is 35, they're considered at risk. And so this completely shifts the trajectory of their care. And so I think that's something that's really important to consider. And if we're serving women who are older, it's also important to consider what the emotional ramifications for this are. So even when there's no scientific basics for different treatment, there's no different medical problems that are evident, she is still considered to be at risk for these things. And so that is really a crucial place of kind to start to service and care for, whether it's ourselves entering those ages, or caring for the mothers if we're doulas. But this causes an extreme amount of anxiety, and even if it's not conscious anxiety, it's sort of hidden, it sort of permeates into so many things. But once they are pregnant, it definitely leads to unnecessary tests that are pushed upon mamas. And I'll put unnecessary in quotes, because again, it's for every mother to decide. But if she's pregnant and she knows no matter what's going on, I want to keep this child, is there a necessity for certain tests and procedures? Do we really need to do this? And that's not explored in the medical field. Like, if you're the doula, you're going to have to be the one bringing that opportunity to opt out in, because mamas will, the hospitals don't, birth centers don't even. I was just talking to my girlfriend who delivered she started at a birth center, and then that was switched over to the hospital. But because their protocols are so in alignment with the hospital protocols and they are so rigid, it does not make space for a diversity of experience. But they were really pressuring her to get certain tests prior to it, and she didn't want the blood work. She kept opting out. I did the same thing, and somehow they still ended up pricking my finger and sending it to my midwife, and so it's just another example of how there's this very thin road that you're on, that if we're gonna help mamas walk it, we have to also equip them with the skills of self-advocacy. So if you don't want to, if you know the full experience around these tests, and that the end result is determining whether or not you want to keep the child or not, and they want to keep it because they waited this whole time to have a baby, then maybe you want to opt out of that. And then not only are we having the discussion of opting out, but we're having the discussion of being loud about it and outspoken, because they will take your blood and test it whether you want them to or not. But all that to say, it also leads to some really heavy interventions. And so this is just equipping mothers with the ability to, to practice discernment and practice, that opportunity of looking inward and knowing what we really want, what they really want. And so I think that as I was trying to figure out how do we discuss this experience, one of the most important things too is when we take a deep dive into these statistics, let's flip the narrative. Because sometimes they feed you with these statistics that aren't even that impressive when you go into it. So one of the statistics, for example, it was coming up with a study that showed women who had children between the age of 34 and 47, 2.2% developed breast cancer within 3 to 7 years. Really, when you take a look at 2%, so you hear that and you hear breast cancer. Oh my God, my chances for breast cancer increase. Now, I didn't even read the study, so I don't actually know who the focus group was, what other things could have been leading. Did they have a history of breast cancer when they came in? You know what I mean? A family history. We don't even, to do a deep dive into these particular studies is sometimes really crucial. But then just also giving mamas the ability to hey, listen, that's 2 in 100 people. That means you're 98% fine. You're 98% not going to get, you know what I mean? And so it was and to the heart that is so afraid and wants this thing so much and is so concerned that it might, things might go on and the worst case scenario might happen. And of course, there's a lot of that comes up in anyone's pregnancy, but particularly I think when it comes to older women. So this is one of the things I encourage us to do. Let's do some deep dives into these statistics and kind of explore them. And maybe if we can flip it over, because when we break it down, it might not be too much. I think for mamas who are over a certain age, it's very, very, very important to take a holistic approach, because a holistic experience takes a deeper dive into the individual reality of the mother. Before we started recording, Justina was talking about going to the acupuncturist and the paperwork she had to fill out that was so detailed according to what she needed, or what was going on, what was happening, is a very big difference than the 3 questions that they will ask an older mother to determine whether or not she's at risk or not. Literally, it's what's your age is the first one. So their algorithm is a rigid algorithm. Whereas when we're dealing with the holistic world, it gets to really take into consideration the individual. So a lot of times the protocols, and I know as doulas, you guys seen it, where decisions are made for interventions with mamas based purely on the protocol, as opposed to on what's actually really being presented. So, are there any extreme indications that is pushing towards this induction right now, other than the statistic that mamas who are at a certain age, who go over a certain number of weeks, end up having these risks associated with? Everything else can seem fine, but if that statistic is looming, they'll still usher her in for that intervention. And so I think as much as possible, who's our team of holistic practitioners, whether it's acupuncture, herbalists, nutritionists. This is a really important piece of it. And again, I talked about this, but it's really okay to opt out. So encouraging our mothers the opportunity to opt out. It blew my mind too when I realized that I could see a person, I could see a midwife who allowed me to opt out of even an internal exam. If I did not want to be touched, or I did not want someone going inside of me, it wasn't actually crucially necessary for my birth to have one. That blew my mind, and so I received that information, going through the holistic communities and everything over 13 years ago. But that allowed me to start to explore this concept of opting out and opting into other modalities. Because if I'm going to an OBGYN for their care, they're rooted in their care system. That's what trained them. That's what they know. They are experts in the field of surgery. They're experts in this. But if I want a different experience for myself, going to a different kind of expert might lead me into a different realm. And so I even just that conversation we had before, I know that we understand this, but this is so deep, and like I said, I can't keep serving mamas. Well, I'm realizing it's very hard to serve mothers that are rooted in hospitals and birth centers to this point because of my experience. But one of the reasons is because a lot of times I see the modalities those places are rooted in, even the birth center doesn't always equip our mothers with the full array of how many natural supports we have in the plant system. And so a perfect example is I had a mother a birth center mother, and you think that's a relatively pro-natural birth kind of place to deliver in. She's going in and they were telling her that she was hypertensive. She was, concerns of preeclampsia were setting in, and they sent her home with nothing. Like, all she could do was just check her sugar levels. All she could do was just kind of check herself, but they didn't give her any alternative things to do to lower her blood pressure. And so with that being said, mushrooms are an incredibly proven reishi mushrooms method for lowering blood pressure in mothers. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of times medical doctors might even prescribe aspirin at 20 weeks and up, like saying that mothers of a certain age, if they take small doses of aspirin every single day, can lower their blood pressure prior to the birth. So this is a proactive measure that hospitals might take. I just saw something, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to put this out there, but in terms of just offering the opportunity for us to think critically about things, I did just see there's more and more information coming out or research coming out that links mothers who take aspirin during pregnancy and children with autism. And so there's a lot of legal things, I guess, fights going on at this point, because there's research now backing this. I'm not here to say yes or no. This can be a controversial space. What I'm here to say is taking mushrooms is a non-pharmaceutical approach. Reishi mushrooms, let me say, like eating them, not, but is a non, there are natural plants, non-pharmaceutical methods towards lowering your blood pressure. Really simple, basic stuff, apple cider vinegar. But these are not things that always are given to mothers at a certain age. They're not talked about. And so I think that's one really important area that our moms can equip them with. I think I got okay. So yeah, so I think that another thing I think is really, really crucial is encouraging mothers, and this is across the board, but particularly older mothers, to nurture their faith. My first call, when I called my midwife, she was just like, I was just like, I'm really scared. I don't know. This was early in my pregnancy. She was just like, it's time to do some shadow work. It's time to dig right in. These fears are here because you've been filled from early on to believe that just by virtue of you being the age you are at risk. And there's all these things that can go on. And so I made my little picture of my yoni scene. This was what I had to root in. This is how I got pregnant. Like, okay, I was able to, my body was able to take a pregnancy because of some of the prayer work I did, I believe. and where I was aligning myself and that work I was doing. So I think it's really important in this process to give mothers the space to actively align with their faith and to use this faith as their starting point. And so one of the first things my midwife said was like, hey, build your altar, but also find altars. Like if it doesn't even necessarily have to be an altar in your home that you construct, or she encouraged it. But I also found that sitting by the river became almost an altar of sorts. And that's me eating an apple, because I was eating this apple one day and my mother said, I was craving apples when I was pregnant with you. And I thought, this is it. Like, this baby's here, like we're here, and so I took a picture because I wanted to remember this moment, because I was literally at a point where I was so afraid on so many other levels that I just needed to keep rooting down on the unseen. Like there's an unseen yes happening here. My body is taking this. There are these signs, there are these cues, and so my midwife, she always refers to the altar almost as like what our children feel when they do sit at our bosom. There's almost this like reset happen with them. So like if Niall gets hurt or something, and I put him right on it, he will recover very quickly when he takes a couple pulls from the milk, and all of a sudden he's kind of neutralized and normalized. And so she said, well, where do we go for that as an adult, and we can liken Mother Earth, as or we can almost refer to ourselves in that same capacity. But when we sit at the earth, we sit at that same space and have that same ability to reset as our children can reset on us. But this was a very important part of the services she provided me, was giving me a place for me to put spirit first. And as my midwife, she was putting spirit first as well. And that was right for me. Of course, I had to shout her out. This is Sister Abba Oyedi. She's Urban Bush Midwifery of Philadelphia. She and everybody's journey is different. So some of our mothers are very concerned about the fact that they're at risk or whatever, and they want to be in the hospital and they want to seek that allopathic care from the surgeons. That's their journey. I'm just here to share mine and also share the education that I've experienced along the way for women who are desiring a natural unmedicated birth at this point. So for me to have a natural unmedicated birth at 42, I almost knew I had to find a midwife who was radical enough to want to work with me at my age, radical, but also at home. So I had to create an autonomous space for myself, because I knew that anything else I'd be rooted in a very rigid system that wouldn't allow for me to be me. And so I feel that one of the first things she said is like, I don't prescribe to that stuff. Like, I don't believe that there's a just geriatric pregnancy age or something like that, So I say that to say, if we can educate more women around how important it is to have home births and to seek the professional consults of midwives who are not bought into it in a system that's bound by insurance protocols, it is so freeing. And I hear a lot of mothers, and it pains me, who are saying like, oh, I can't afford a home birth. That's extra money because it's a couple thousand out of your pocket, as opposed to using your own insurance to cover the cost. I totally get that. I just wish that, so I'm going to be honest, I wish the mothers, some of them who have said that, ended up having very traumatic, unnecessary C-sections due to the location of their birth and their care providers, and we were discussing it, but it's almost like I went from being very quiet about this stuff to wanting to be much more vocal and share that, because I don't think it's emphasized enough. And we know that when it comes to Black women and women of color, going into these medicalized spaces can be very, very dangerous. And so I gotta say, now I'm 100% in on home births. And so that being said, I said, we can dive into this concept of yin. Like I said, I spent a lot of time at the river. You know, I don't know your spiritual or religious background, but river representing Oshun, river representing yin energy, fluidity. This is a space that is extremely calming physically. It relaxes your vibration if you immerse your feet in the river. So I often would get mothers like, go by the river, go by the river, sit by the river, let the river do its work on you. And exploring how important rest and relaxation really are, particularly to older women, because we are inundated with so many of that fear-based statistics and protocols. So as much as we can, doing our work in those restful spaces, in rested spaces. And so with that, I said we could take maybe a few-minute break and go into some restorative yoga practice if we still have time for that. But I think that, yeah, let me, does anyone have questions? I know we were going with a whole discussion before. I feel like there's so much knowledge in this space right here. You know, by all means, jump in, share. Hold on. Can do.
Yeah, I have to get off the wind. They're so beautiful. The wind is like my river, the sun and the wind. But I appreciate, Liz, your contrasting, you owning your story as saying, this is what set me free in my labor journey. And no matter what it is, just know that fear-based place is what's really discouraging. The fear tactics take a physical toll on our bodies, and then as a result, also a physical toll on your baby. So I have a question just in regards to Niall. What you observe in him because of some of your choices that, you know, you can honestly say, I can contrast that a parent that made a different decision, I know because I made this one, that it made a complete difference.
You know, it's so hard because you don't know. I don't, you know, there's this, I'm not sure. I do feel that so much of the journey right now is characterized by, you know, breastfeeding. He's 2 and I'm still on that journey. And I'd like to say that I think birth is traumatic for our babies coming in, regardless of the location and space and all of that. Like, I just think it's physically a traumatic experience coming on earth. But I'd like to say that coming into, I'll say this is a perfect example. And I can't necessarily see the difference, you know what I mean? Like, can you see a difference between breastfed babies or formula fed babies? Not, can you? You know, I don't know, but I'll say that one of the things that stand out in my mind is it was like 3 days after he was born and he developed jaundice. And I called my midwife, maybe 2 days, by the second day. And she was like, hey, just sit in the window, let the sun shine on him. And there's this video of his dad holding him, and we're like discussing what his name should be, you know, and so we're taking our time with it. It took weeks to name this child, you know, and the baby's just in the sunlight and he's spreading his arms and he's just so peaceful, and Dad and I are having a cup of coffee talking, and it was such a peaceful moment. And to juxtapose that with the mamas that I've been in hospitals with, where they end up having to stay another day and the child's not by them and not even, you know, getting this because they're being monitored, and that being a traumatic experience for the 2-day-old child, you know, and the 2-day-old mama who wants to go home and is exhausted and doesn't and can't even, has no access to sunlight from that hospital room, you know. And so I think about that being if that's something, you know, I really like. And the way I see, I don't know, and chime in, I feel like jaundice is something a lot of melanated children go through. Like, it's just so common. Is it really like the worst case scenario?
Liz, real quick, I wanted to just say thank you for like putting it out there that there's a different way, right? The medical system, and it's hard when you talk to people because they're like, oh, you're against Western medicine, and it's like, actually, yeah, low key, because that medicine is not to heal us. That medicine is to trap us in this big pharma cycle so that we can continue to get medicine. I mean, it's so, but even like Michelle Obama, when she tried to do the campaign for less sugar, oh no, like, girl, we might kill you in your sleep. Don't play with the sugar industry, right? Teaching women how to take care of their bodies and the herbs and different stuff like that. And there's a provider out here, for those of you, I'm out of Denver, and she works out of Lighthouse Complex Care, and she actually reversed her child's autism from doing parasite cleanse and like all this different holistic work. And they're a holistic provider. And that, I think a lot of these, I don't know if you want to call it diseases or ailments, we're now normalizing, and it's like, but is that really normal? And I think it's crazy when, like, even my cousin who I just helped, she had one high blood pressure reading, and they said, well, now you have high blood pressure and we're going to have to induce, because, well, yeah, I got a high blood pressure reading, I don't like y'all, and this setting is making me feel anxious. Like, you got me given a different doctor that's sticking me, like, the care is not even conducive to trauma. You got a different person coming into your room every single time that then is going to give you a cervical check. So my saying to everybody on here, we have to do better because we are knowing better, y'all. Like, we're learning better. We have to do better. Let's not be ignorant in that. Well, that's just the way it was. That's just how things have been. Well, also, we have been birthing children since people was created, like however you believe that happened. We've been doing this. Our bodies have been doing this. And so, Liz, I'm just so proud of you and so good to meet you, because everything you're talking about is like my alignment and my vision when I do decide to have kids. But it's that pressure. You got to have them at 20. I wasn't ready at 20. I'm 30 now. I'm still not ready, because now I've embarked on this beautiful doula journey. And so it just, it's the universe aligns.
Baby, 30.
Right. And the universe aligns. And I'm just so empowered, because, like, even when I've been to the doctor, it's like, you're at the geriatric. I'm like, girl, let me tell you, geriatric. I caretake for my grandma. She's 90. That's geriatric. Like, so I just wanted to shout you out that, like, I'm so proud of you that you embarked on that, and that, yeah, y'all, everybody on here, like, if you have questions, you can do it. But these doctors, they function from scare tactics. And when you really look at the percentages, when you sign that C-section disclosure, one of the side effects is death. Now, when you're trying to do your natural birth, that's not on there. They don't want to talk about the things that come with a C-section. And I could go on for days, but I just wanted to shout you out, girl.
Well, thank you. I mean, because I say that even just promoting home birth with the right midwife, a different midwife. My particular birth, we would have been at the hospital for a transport. I gotta say, Abba was so amazing in terms of just tapping into my normal and Niall's normal, like the baby's normal through that process. And even she was like, it was a little rough, because at one point she was like, if we're at the point where if you do a transport, I can't go with you, because you're so far out of the protocol realm that I'll get looked at, and I'm glad that, for the forces that be, that we stayed with it, because we were fine. But it is a very scary, and that's the other thing, that one of the first things she did with me was like, well, we can't talk about birth without talking about death. And let's not be afraid to even go on that journey together. And so she's did this particular kind of medicine wheel of healing the archetypes from within, starting with the mother archetype to the father archetype to the inner child archetype. We went through all of the different 4 elements, and so our prenatal appointments were based on exploring spirit, more even than exploring, like, I think there were sometimes, like, she definitely didn't weigh me every visit, she'd take a blood pressure, it wasn't a big deal, and so for me in my space, that's what worked. So that being said, knowing that we are animals and the home is the safest place. It's our space. It has our smells. It's our autonomy in it. You know, that becomes when an animal is in nature and goes to labor, you know, they create a little laboring corner for themselves. They're not creating that corner and then halfway through the labor transporting into a foreign space with foreign smells and foreign people where shifts change and doctors come in, and you know, it's a very different experience. And so I knew that going in. What I didn't realize going in is just how liberating the experience would become for me. I also knew going in, because I was a doula, there was no way I was going to be able to go through that portal with someone being like, hey, I can give you some medicine for the pain. I could give you a cocktail. I remember my first birth, it was as a doula, it was 18 hours. And 15 hours in, they came in and told mom, like, we can give you a cocktail for the pain. And I was thinking, I want a cocktail. Like, I'm not even in labor and I want that cocktail. So I remember like mental note, Liz, like, you are not strong enough to have a natural birth in the hospital. Stay far away from where they're going to offer you anything, you know. And that was my why. You know, everyone's got a different why. So that was mine. But I do think that we have to talk more about the alternatives. And then we have to prepare mothers too. And so when you're being at 30, I remember being at 34 crying, feeling like I was getting so old. Girl, I look at 34 like, damn, you were just a baby. You were a baby at 34. I am so glad I waited through my 30s. The 30s for me was this process of well, therapy, you know what I mean? Like I had seen the fun times of my 20s, and then now I'd seen you get to see all the patterns really play out in your life where you're like, oh, I see that pattern. Let me get some help around it, you know? And so I do feel that I'm able to show up as in a different way in my 40s than I would have. And I'm not saying wait till you're a certain age. No, you know what I'm saying? I'm not promoting that either. I'm just sharing why I'm grateful that I did. You know, and in that process, these were the tools and the things kind of I had to acquire on the way to make that an empowering experience for me. So yeah, thank you. And really thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, Marpeza. Like, you know, I just being able to pull the slides together and get the data around it and articulate some of this stuff, because I really feel we have to do a lot of education around these things, just education around natural support systems for moms in labor. Because you're right, like the hospital, the medical industry is not, it's not a birthing space, you know. It's a hospital is not necessarily an ideal optimum space for birthing a child. It's not. It's an optimum space if you need to have a surgery to birth the child, but not if you want to have a natural unmedicated birth, you know. So, okay. So Marpeza, how much time do we have? We have like another.
Yeah, we have about 20 minutes. So if we want to break for like 5 minutes, and if you are like tuning in on a recording, sorry, my family's for real in the house. They all just came. But if you are just tuning in, one, we hope that this was like super fruitful for you enough to also send it to the next birthing family. Because it's also a decision that two people need to be in accordance with, because of, you know, just building that birth team. Is your partner on board? What is your partner? You know, how much do they know? So dang, it was awesome, super awesome. So let's go ahead and shift for 5 minutes. So about 1:42 here, and then 3:32 your time.
Okay.
And then we can just close out with that.
Okay, awesome.
Ooh, all right. So what did we grab? Pillows, blankets.
Yes, all the pillows you can find, any blankets you can find. Restorative is really about getting into a space where you can actually, we're going to take the remaining 15 minutes of the class and just rest, really, like relax, fall asleep. If we fall asleep, that's even better. So I'll probably just do 2 postures, really simple things that we can do
I love it. Well, we'll see you shortly, and we can all keep our screens off when we start.
Okay, so it's 2, so okay, 38, so 45, let's say. 12:45. What'd you say? What time did you say? I'm sorry.
What's that?
You can do your-
1:40 or 3. What time are you? What time is it there?
It's 2:39 here, but what time for you? I can work on your time.
Oh, so 2:40. 2:43.
Oh, okay.